It was raining when I left. Not the gentle, poetic kind of rain, but the cold, sideways sheets that slapped against my face as I dragged my suitcase down the driveway. The porch light was still on, casting a yellow glow on the front door that had just slammed behind me. I stood there for a second, soaked and shaking, unsure whether it was from the cold or from the words still echoing in my head. Get out. That's what my father had said. Not yelled in anger, but spoken in a voice so sharp and certain it cut deeper than if he'd screamed it. Like he'd finally stopped pretending to tolerate me. Like he was relieved to erase me from the family equation. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just picked up my bags and walked out the way you do when you know nothing you say will change a thing. My mother didn't follow. My sister didn't peek through the upstairs window. It was as if the house had swallowed itself whole and spit me out. That was 1 week ago. Today, I stood barefoot on the oak floors of a villa just outside Austin, Texas. 3 bedrooms, vaulted ceilings, a sunlit kitchen, with glass walls that opened to a backyard full of lavender and wild citrus trees. I could hear birdsong outside and the quiet hum of the central air inside. No tension, no judgment, just space. The closing paperwork was still on the marble counter. My name was there in bold serif type, stamped on the deed. Claire Morgan, owner, no cosigner, no inheritance, just me. I took a slow breath and pressed my hand against the wall like I needed to make sure it was real. The coolness of the painted plaster beneath my fingers grounded me. It hadn't always felt this solid. Just 7 days ago, I was still trying to hold it all together from my tiny studio apartment, balancing invoices and heating bills. I still hadn't told anyone in my family what I really did for a living. As far as they knew, I was some dropout who designed websites for pocket change. As far as they were concerned, I'd thrown away my future. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know I built something from scratch. Something real. Something worth more than any degree they had ever bragged about. And now, standing in this house, my house, I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to begin again. My name is Claire Morgan. I was born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, a place where lawn signs during election season said more about a household than any conversation ever could. Our neighborhood was quiet upper middle class, full of families who had dinner together at 6 sharp, and believed that children should reflect their parents' success, not their own. My father, Richard Morgan, was a professor of economics at the State University. He believed in numbers, logic, and legacy. He wore pressed shirts even on weekends and referred to family discussions as productive dialogues. To him, success meant degrees on the wall and names printed in alumni magazines. He measured people in academic credits and professional titles. My mother, Susan Morgan, had once been the respected principal of one of Lexington's top public high schools. She believed in order. She ironed napkins for Sunday dinner. She taught us to fold towels into thirds, not halves, because presentation matters. For her, a well-run family was like a well-run school, quiet, controlled, and always prepared. Then there was Hannah, my older sister by 5 years, a pediatrician, married to a corporate attorney. 2 kids, a golden retriever, a house in Bethesda with matching white shutters. She was in every way the prototype, the one who had followed the blueprint, the one who gave our parents something to show off during bridge club. I was the outlier. I didn't hate school. I did fine. But I wasn't driven by grades or test scores. I didn't dream about Ivy League campuses or white coats. I dreamed about building things, little programs that solve simple problems. I built my first website when I was 13. It was just a static page with a calculator for babysitting fees, but I loved the way lines of code could come together and do something useful. When I was 15, I fixed the Wi-Fi router at my church and wrote a new check-in system for the front desk. I didn't ask for payment. I just liked solving things. But when I told my father, he barely looked up from his journal article. "You're wasting time. Focus on what matters," he said. To my parents, what mattered was college. What mattered was following the path. What mattered was not falling behind. And somewhere along the line, I became a walking disappointment, not because I had failed, but because I refused to conform. Every dinner became an update on Hannah's residency, her fellowship interviews, her glowing performance reviews. They talked about her kids like they were prodigies, reading early, walking early, smiling perfectly on cue. And me, Claire. Are you retaking your SATs again this summer? Claire, did you even apply to the internship I sent you, Claire? Why can't you be more focused? Eventually, I stopped trying to explain myself. I became quiet, careful. I kept my wins to myself and my doubts even closer. I lived in their house, but I didn't live in their world. I was tolerated, not embraced. I was the smart but confused one, the phase they were waiting to end. I didn't tell them I had paying clients by the time I was 17, that I had saved up almost $4,000 building booking systems for local hair salons and dental offices. I didn't tell them I had a plan. And when senior year came, I didn't apply to any colleges. I already knew where I wanted to go. Out. It happened in May of my senior year, right after dinner. We were sitting at the table, the same one we'd used since I was 10, oak wood polished every week, by my mother always set with matching placemats. My dad had arranged 3 neat piles of college brochures, one for each tier of school he deemed acceptable. Top tier Princeton, Yale, Stanford. Second tier Duke, UVA, Northwestern. Backup tier schools that still looked respectable on LinkedIn. He slid the piles toward me like he was offering a menu at a restaurant I hadn't asked to visit. "We'll support you through your undergrad if you choose wisely," he said as though that was a gift. "Law or business would be ideal." My mother chimed in. "Or something practical, something secure, something that leads somewhere." I stared at the brochures but didn't touch them. My heart was pounding in my chest so loud I could barely hear the silverware clinking around me. I had rehearsed this moment a dozen times in my car in the shower, even once in my head while standing in the checkout line at Target. Now it was here. "I'm not applying," I said. For a moment I thought they hadn't heard me. Then my father placed his fork down, wiped the corners of his mouth with his napkin, and said very slowly, "You'll repeat that. I'm not going to college. I've already started my own business. I have 3 clients, a functioning product, and almost $4,000 saved. I want to see how far I can take it." There was a silence so deep I could hear the fridge humming in the next room. My mother spoke first. "Claire, this is not funny. I'm not joking. You're gambling your future," she said, voice shaking. "Do you think we worked all these years so you could become... What a freelance blogger. I'm building software. Real software. I'm helping small businesses book clients, track inventory, send invoices." My father stood up not with violence, but with finality. "You will not disgrace this family by skipping higher education. Not while you live under this roof." "I'm not trying to disgrace anyone." "You think you're special," he said, voice rising. "Every teenager thinks they're some kind of prodigy now. You're not Steve Jobs. You're not building the next Google. You're playing with tools you don't even understand. I do understand. I've built everything on my own. You've never even asked me what I'm doing because it doesn't matter." The words hit harder than I thought they would. My mother's eyes darted toward her plate. My sister wasn't home that night, probably FaceTiming with her husband in their glass condo somewhere. But if she had been, I knew exactly what she would have said. "Claire, just do the smart thing. Play the long game. Be normal." I got up from the table. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "To pack." "Claire," she started, but my father raised his hand. "If she's made her choice, then let her live with it." That night, I zipped up 2 suitcases, loaded them into my Civic, and drove off without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking. I had no plan beyond the first week. Just a small apartment waiting for me in Fort Worth, Texas, a Craigslist rental I had never seen in person. I drove through the night fueled by a mixture of fear and clarity. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I just knew I could no longer stay in a house where who I was had become a source of shame. The apartment was 350 square feet. The floor creaked when I walked. The walls were yellowed from age, and the windows leaked during storms. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, no one was monitoring my schedule, correcting my posture, or comparing me to someone else. I bought a secondhand desk and set it up beside the only wall outlet. Every morning I made instant coffee and worked from sunup until the streetlights flickered on. There was no boss, no office, and no praise. Just me and my idea. I called the platform Clinic Nest. The concept was simple help. Independent clinics manage their appointment bookings and follow-ups without the bloated, overpriced systems built for hospitals. It wasn't revolutionary, but it worked. My early users were small dental offices, pediatricians with one assistant, and chiropractors in strip malls. At night, I sent cold emails. Most went unanswered. A few were polite rejections. Some asked where I had studied. When I replied that I hadn't gone to college, the conversations usually ended there. My savings dwindled. I ate cheap noodles. I slept with socks and 2 blankets in the winter because the heater didn't reach my side of the room. Once during a particularly hard week, I called my mother, just to hear her voice. When she asked what I was doing, I told her honestly I hadn't gone back to school. I was still working on my company. She paused. Then she said, "Then don't expect anyone to be waiting for you." That sentence settled in my chest like a stone. I sat on the floor afterward, wrapped in my hoodie, and stared at nothing. But I didn't stop. 3 months later, I had 4 paying clients. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pay rent and keep the lights on. Then one evening in February, I was driving back from a site visit when another car rear-ended me at a red light. No injuries, but my car was dead. The repair estimate, $800. I didn't have it. I went home, sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by half-sealed mailing boxes and overdue invoices, and wondered had I made the biggest mistake of my life. That night, I saw a post online about a free business meetup at the local library. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe just the reassurance that someone else out there was trying too. So I went, and everything changed. The room was small, plain, and smelled faintly of old books and carpet cleaner. There were no banners, no corporate booths, no fancy name tags. Just folding chairs, a projector humming in the back, and about 30 people, some in jeans, some in thrifted blazers, gathered to talk about running small businesses. I sat in the back, hoping no one would ask me anything. The woman on stage introduced herself as Diana Brooks. She was in her late 50s, hair tied back, wearing flat shoes and a denim jacket. She didn't sound like a tech executive, but as she spoke, I realized she'd been one former CFO of a mid-sized logistics software company, now semi-retired, and consulting for early-stage ventures. She spoke about pivoting cash flow, building something that actually solves a problem. No hype, no buzzwords, just clarity. When the Q&A ended, I waited for the room to clear out. My hands were sweating. I walked up to her with a homemade business card I had printed on matte paper at the local copy shop. "I'm Claire," I said. "I run a tiny platform for appointment scheduling, mostly clinics. I don't have funding or degrees, but I have 4 clients and some revenue." She looked at me, really looked, then said, "Show me." I opened my laptop, walked her through the user dashboard, the reporting features, the booking logic. Nothing fancy, but functional. "You're solving something real," she said after a pause, "but you're selling it like it's disposable." "What do you mean? You're marketing to solo clinics?" "That's hard. High churn, low margins. What if you sold to group practices instead, small chains? You already built the bones. Now build out the muscle." We talked for over an hour in the corner of that library. That night I went home and rewrote my entire pitch deck. Clinic Nest wasn't just a solo booking tool anymore. It became a lightweight integrated system for small to mid-sized medical networks, appointment scheduling, patient reminders, basic billing. Diana became my mentor, not just in business, but in the way a good teacher is a lifeline when the world makes no sense. She taught me how to read cash flow, how to write follow-up emails that didn't sound desperate, how to believe I could sit at any table if I brought value with me. She also gave me my first real investment, $25,000 from her consulting firm. It was enough to cover development upgrades, file a real LLC, and hire a part-time developer named Matt, who worked out of his garage and knew React better than anyone I'd ever met. I moved operations into a shared co-working space downtown. My desk was wedged between a nonprofit's printer and a guy selling handmade dog treats online. But it was still the first place where I could say this is where I build. My first big break came 6 months later. A small regional chain called Oakline Medical was looking to upgrade their outdated software. Their IT guy had stumbled across Clinic Nest during a demo I had posted on a forum. He asked if we could handle 5 locations. "Yes," I replied without blinking, even though we had never handled more than one. Matt and I worked 70 hours that week building a custom reporting module and onboarding tools for multi-location clinics. They signed a 6-month pilot contract for $18,000. That deal paid for my car repair, for new hosting infrastructure, for groceries that didn't come from the discount aisle. From there, it snowballed. One referral led to another. Diana introduced me to her accountant, who helped me restructure my pricing model. We moved from monthly flat fees to usage-based billing with tiered support. Revenue tripled in the next quarter. By year 2, we had crossed $220,000 in ARR, not unicorn numbers, not front page of TechCrunch numbers, but enough. Enough to pay myself a modest salary. Enough to stop worrying if the card would decline at checkout. Enough to sleep more than 5 hours a night. And still, I told no one in my family. As far as they knew, I was struggling somewhere in Texas, too proud to come home. My mother still called occasionally, usually to update me on Hannah's growing list of honors. Your sister just got featured in a medical journal, she'd say. Her twins are learning Spanish now. Isn't that wonderful, I'd say. That's great, and let her fill the space with praise I'd never earned. Then came the email that changed everything. It was from the operations manager at Redwood Family Clinics, a growing network of pediatric and internal medicine practices across the Southwest. They had 22 locations and were still using a combination of Excel and paper forms to manage appointments. They had heard about Clinic Nest through Oakline's CTO. I flew to Phoenix for the demo. I wore a pressed blouse I borrowed from Diana and the same pair of black flats I had worn to my high school graduation. My laptop barely fit in my worn leather tote. But I stood in that room with 6 executives and walked them through the entire system live, not screenshots. They asked sharp questions. I gave sharper answers. When they signed the contract for a full system rollout valued at $145,000 over the first year, I excused myself, walked into a bathroom stall, and cried. Not because of the money, because for the first time I felt undeniable. After the Phoenix rollout, things accelerated. More clients, more team members. I hired Matt full-time, added a product designer, leased a small office in Austin where we could finally meet in person instead of Zoom calls and coffee shops. I never posted about it, I never bragged, I never called home to say, look what I've done. But I kept building. By year 3, Clinic Nest was serving over 150 independent medical practices across 9 states. And I was still driving my 10-year-old Civic. Still living in a rented apartment with stained carpet. Still pretending I hadn't made it because being invisible was safer than being resented. Until one day I got a call from my sister. It was short, formal. Claire's dad lost his teaching position. Budget cuts. And Mom's heart medication isn't covered by their insurance anymore. They're not saying it, but they're in trouble. I listened. I said I'm sorry to hear that. She didn't ask for anything, but I knew what I had to do. That night, I called my lawyer and set up 2 shell entities. One was a charitable education trust called Elm Foundation, which would issue monthly grant payments to cover my parents' mortgage and out-of-pocket medical bills. The other was a consulting firm called Clear Oak Solutions, which issued a contract to Richard Morgan for civic curriculum writing at $2,500 per month. Both were fully legal. Neither mentioned me. When the first wire arrived, my father called my mother from the porch saying, "Looks like someone out there still values education." I sat alone in my apartment, smiling softly. They didn't need to know the truth. I didn't need them to know it. Not yet. Thanksgiving came like it always did. Early November wind, grocery store chaos, too much cinnamon in the pies. I hadn't been home in nearly 3 years, but this time I said yes. Maybe because I knew I wasn't the same person anymore. Or maybe because I was tired of hiding. I arrived in Lexington a day early, rented a modest sedan, and stayed at a small inn near the old train station. The house hadn't changed much, same beige shutters, same rake marks in the lawn, same wind chimes by the porch. But I had. In my bag, I carried a folder 46 pages thick and a flash drive. Inside were bank statements, tax documents, business press features, screenshots from the Clinic Nest dashboard, and proof of every single dollar I had sent their way over the past 2 years. I wasn't planning to throw it in their faces. I just needed the truth to have a shape. Thanksgiving dinner started at 6 sharp. My mother wore a burgundy blouse and moved through the kitchen like a small general. My father sat in his chair, reading the business section as if no one else were in the room. Hannah arrived 15 minutes early. wearing a white coat even though it wasn't cold with her husband in tow, and their twins in matching corduroy. No one mentioned my company. No one asked where I'd been living or how I'd gotten there. We sat down at the dining table like it was a courtroom. Grace was said. Toasts were made. My father stood to give his usual remarks about gratitude legacy and Hannah's latest medical conference presentation. Then everyone began to eat. I waited until the first round of conversation lulled. Then I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. "I'd like to share something I said." The room paused, like someone had pulled the power from the wall. My mother frowned. Hannah leaned back. My father raised one brow. I opened the folder and slid a page forward. It was a centerfold from Health Tech Weekly, featuring a rare photo of me standing in front of a projector, smiling, gesturing to a slide deck that read, "Claire Morgan, founder and CEO of Clinic Nest." "This is my company," I said quietly. "I built it 3 years ago. We serve over 150 medical practices in 9 states. We closed $2.3 million in revenue last year." My father picked up the page like it was counterfeit. "Where did you get this printed?" he asked. "It's real. You can search the article online." "And what is this?" he said, flipping to a bank statement showing mortgage payments made from the Elm Foundation. "That's your house. I've been covering your payments since you lost your job. Through a trust." He said nothing. I turned to my mother. "Your heart medication, the specialty drugs, I covered every refill for the past 16 months. She blinked, lips slightly parted. I laid out another page. "This contract here," I said, pointing, "is between Clear Oak Solutions and Richard Morgan. It's not a state consulting contract. It's me. I created it to give you a steady income, so you wouldn't feel like you'd failed." No one moved. I pulled out the final sheet. "Your grandchildren's scholarship fund. It didn't come from a school district or foundation." That was me too. I funded the grants through a shell program to cover their tuition. Hannah stood up. "This is insane," she said. "You write some code, make a website or two, and suddenly think you're better than us." "I never said I was better," I replied. "I just never said anything, because I knew you wouldn't listen." My father finally spoke. "You're a liar, a dropout, a disgrace who had to pretend to be someone else just to get ahead." I didn't flinch. "I didn't build this to prove you wrong. I built it because you left me no other way. And now you want praise," he said. "After hiding everything behind fake companies, I don't want praise," I said. "But I won't be invisible anymore." He slammed his hand against the table, making the silverware jump. "I don't want to hear another word." I stood up. "You don't have to." I gathered the documents and slid them back into the folder. "I'm done funding people who see me as a mistake." My mother stood suddenly, voice shaking. "Claire, what about next month's support?" I looked at her, really looked. She was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown. "People who see me as a disgrace," I said, "can't keep living off my money." No one followed me out. No one called after me. I drove back to the inn in silence, the cold creeping into my hands, even with the heat on full blast. The next morning, I boarded a flight to Austin. My new house sat on the edge of a quiet neighborhood surrounded by native grasses and wild trees. I had bought it a year ago, but hadn't lived in it until now. 3 bedrooms, sunroom, a walk-in pantry. The kind of house that used to be just another listing I'd scroll past during late-night fantasies. Now it was mine. The first thing I did was clear out all the staging furniture. The fake antiques, the gray-on-gray rugs, the generic art. I hired an interior architect named Elise to help me turn it into a real home. We chose walnut floors, brass fixtures, soft whites, and warm earth tones. A place that felt lived in, not curated, not borrowed. While Elise worked on the space, I made a different set of calls. I contacted my attorney and dissolved both Elm Foundation and Clear Oak Solutions. I canceled the scholarship program, not out of cruelty, but because the truth had already arrived and been rejected. No more anonymity, no more double life. 2 weeks later, I walked into the new Clinic Nest headquarters in downtown Austin. 9th floor, glass walls, ocean light. Matt was already there, along with Lena, our new lead developer, and Sarah from operations. "Is this the real start now?" Sarah asked me that morning. "Yes," I said. "This time, I'm not hiding." In the first quarter after the move, we signed 3 new clients. A venture fund offered us a Series A term sheet valuing the company at $14.6 million. And for the first time I bought a car, I actually wanted a navy blue electric SUV. Not because I needed to show it off, but because I finally believed I deserved it. I started showing up to events, speaking on panels, mentoring other young women trying to build something without a degree, without family support, without permission. One night after a local startup founder's dinner, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine watching the sky turn purple behind the trees. That was when the phone rang. It was my sister. I thought about ignoring it. I had done that many times before, but this time something made me answer. Her voice was quiet. "Claire, I'm not calling to ask for anything." I waited. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you did. And I'm sorry. I stayed silent. I'm sorry I never saw you. Not really. I was so caught up trying to be perfect that I missed who you were becoming. A part of me wanted to believe it. Another part didn't need to. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. She didn't push for more. She didn't ask to visit. Just said goodnight. A week later, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. Slanted cursive I hadn't seen in years. From my father. "Claire, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just say it plainly. I was wrong. Wrong to believe that only one path leads to success. Wrong to treat you like you were less simply because you chose differently. When you stood up at the table, I saw someone I didn't recognize, not because you had changed, but because I had refused to see you. If you never want to speak to me again, I understand. But know this, I'm proud of you. And ashamed it took me this long to say it. Love, Dad." I read the letter 5 times. I didn't cry, but I did feel something loosen inside my chest, like a knot finally starting to unravel. I didn't write back right away, but eventually I sent a card. "Thank you for writing. I'm building the life I always wanted. If you want to be part of it, the only requirement is respect." And that was enough. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still contracts to renegotiate, bugs, to fix weeks where I didn't sleep more than 5 hours, and moments of doubt that crept in between investor calls and team meetings. But something had shifted. I wasn't building in the shadows anymore. I no longer flinched when someone asked what I did for a living. I didn't downplay my role. I didn't use vague titles like freelancer or independent developer. I stood fully in what I had made. I was the founder, the CEO. And for the first time I could say it out loud without waiting for someone to tell me I didn't belong. Clinic Nest continued to grow. We onboarded our 200th clinic in the spring. Matt led the engineering team. Sarah restructured customer support with a new CRM system that cut response time in half. Lena rolled out a mobile dashboard that made clients audibly gasp during demos. Every week, someone new joined our team: designers, analysts, client success managers. People who believed in the same thing I did. Simple tools can make hard work easier. But as the company grew, something else stirred inside me. I kept thinking about the version of myself who had once slept on the floor of a 350 square foot apartment building, tools no one had asked for, hoping that someone out there would just believe. Not everyone gets lucky. Not everyone meets a Diana Brooks at exactly the right moment. So I created a program, the Forge Circle, a grant and mentorship fund specifically for young founders without degrees, but with working prototypes, real traction, and relentless commitment. We didn't ask where they went to school. We didn't ask for GPAs or test scores. We asked what they wanted to build and why. We launched quietly with a website and a short video filmed in my backyard. No big PR push, no viral campaign. Within 4 weeks, we had over 200 applicants. The first grant recipient was Marcus Bell, a 21-year-old in rural Georgia who had built an app to help local farmers track seasonal supply needs and delivery routes. He had no college education, worked nights at a gas station, and had bootstrapped the entire platform with free tools and library Wi-Fi. When I told him he was getting $25,000 and a 6-month mentorship, he broke down in tears. I did too. We hosted our first Forge Circle dinner that summer. A long table under string lights in my backyard. Home-cooked food, no pitch decks, just real conversations about purpose, fear, and the quiet kind of bravery. Matt brought his partner. Sarah's husband made a lemon tart. Diana flew in from Seattle just to sit beside me. At one point, I looked around the table and realized this was my family now. A community built not from blood, but from belief. Then one Sunday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered on instinct. "Hi," my mother said. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "I hope this isn't a bad time." I paused. "No, it's not. We were wondering," she continued, "if we could visit. Your father and I. Just to see you. Not to talk about anything in particular. Just to be there." I didn't say yes right away. I needed to sit with the question. Not because I was angry, but because I had spent so long shaping my life away from their approval. I needed to know I could meet them as the person I had become, not the daughter they still wanted me to be. 3 weeks later, we met at a small cafe near my house. I chose the spot. Outdoor seating, neutral ground. I arrived early, ordered an iced coffee, and sat by the window. They came on time. My father looked older. His hair was fully white now. My mother wore a soft floral dress and didn't have her usual armor of perfect lipstick and tight posture. We sat. No one spoke for a full minute. Then my father cleared his throat. "I read your interview in the Founder's Journal," he said. "The company, what you've done. It's remarkable." "Thank you," I said simply. He looked down at his cup. "I was wrong. Not just about the business. About you." My mother reached for my hand but stopped midway, unsure. "We spent so long trying to mold you into something familiar, we didn't realize you were building something better, your own shape." I let the silence fill the space. I didn't rush in to make them comfortable. Finally, I spoke. "I don't need you to rewrite the past, but if you want to be part of my present, it has to be with respect." They both nodded. We talked for another half hour about the weather, about a new park opening down the street, about Hannah's kids. It wasn't profound. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. When we stood to leave, my mother reached in for a hug. It was careful, not too tight, not performative, just enough. They flew home that evening. I didn't cry when they left. I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. I just felt whole. That night, I sat in the quiet of my home, the windows open to a warm breeze, and texted Diana. "They came," she replied, and I typed back, "I stayed calm. I stayed me." She answered with one word, "Good," because in the end, that's all I ever wanted, not to win, not to be praised, but to remain whole in the face of everything that once tried to fragment me. And now I was. Every Sunday evening, I host a dinner in my backyard. It's not a company event. There's no branding, no networking, just a wooden table, mismatched chairs, string lights that sway in the Texas breeze, and people who show up for the right reasons. Sometimes it's just me and Matt and a couple of early Forge Circle grantees. Sometimes 20 people show up, developers, former nurses building wellness apps, single dads running e-commerce side hustles. We cook together, pass around homemade bread and salads, drink wine from local vineyards, and talk. Not about growth hacks, not about valuations, but about real things, doubt, purpose, legacy. It's the kind of space I used to dream about in the middle of the night when I was still sleeping on a floor mattress, eating dollar store canned soup, wondering if I'd ever feel like I belonged anywhere. Now I don't wonder, because I built it. And I didn't build it out of revenge. I didn't build it to prove my family wrong. I built it because I needed to know that living on your own terms was still possible, even if it cost you everything at first. The world tells you that forgiveness is a door someone else has to open, that you wait, that you hope, that you prove yourself enough to be welcomed back in. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Forgiveness doesn't always begin with someone saying sorry. Sometimes it begins when you stop waiting, when you stop shrinking yourself for the comfort of people who refuse to see you, when you stop performing worthiness and start claiming it. My story isn't the story of a genius who disrupted an industry. It's the story of someone who refused to go back even when returning would have been easier. Someone who stayed the course when there was no applause, no safety net, no backup plan. Someone who realized that family is not always a place you return to. It's sometimes a place you build from scratch, person by person, over shared meals and hard conversations. Do I wish things had been different with my parents? Sometimes, but I also know that if I hadn't been pushed out, I may never have built anything at all. Pain can be the beginning of vision. Exile can be the start of invention. There are people out there right now living in small rooms with big dreams, wondering if anyone will ever believe in them. I want to tell them, maybe you don't need someone to believe in you yet. Maybe you just need time, time to build quietly, time to survive with dignity, time to become undeniable. Because the world may not see you right now. But if you keep going, if you keep building, there will come a day when you no longer need to be seen by those who refuse to look in the first place. You will be whole. You will be home. And on that day, whether or not they ever say I'm proud of you, it won't matter, because you'll already know. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in June when I got the letter. Handwritten, no return address. Just my name in firm, deliberate script across the envelope. The kind of handwriting that belonged to red pens and grade books. I knew it was from him before I opened it. Inside was a short note. No poetic phrases. No dramatic apology. Just my father's voice stripped of performance. Claire, your mother told me about the Forge Circle. I read about your Sunday dinners. I don't know how to say this without sounding late to everything, but I'm proud. Not because you succeeded, but because you stayed true. That's something I never did when I was your age. I spent too long chasing respect from the wrong rooms. You didn't. I'm learning from you now. Dad. I folded the letter slowly, pressing it flat along the crease, and slid it back into the envelope. No tears, just a quiet exhale. Later that day, I sat outside with a glass of lemonade, while Marcus, our first grantee, walked around the backyard FaceTiming with a local investor for his farming app. Two other recipients, Aaliyah and Jen, were sitting under the shade of the oak tree, swapping ideas for a healthcare billing solution. Matt grilled corn. Diana arrived late with a homemade cherry pie and a bottle of wine. As the sun set, I turned on the porch lights, their soft glow dancing across the wooden table. Someone asked Claire, "How did this all start?" I paused, and then said simply, "With silence." And the decision not to let it last forever. They didn't press further. They didn't need to. Because the truth was already written in the way we gathered, the way we listened to one another, the way we created space where none had been given before. That night, as I loaded plates into the dishwasher and let the laughter from the yard filter in through the screen door, I realized something I hadn't said out loud until now. This life is enough. Not perfect, not easy, but mine. Fully mine. Not everyone gets the chance to rewrite their story. Sometimes the roles we're assigned, black sheep, failure, dropout, cling to us longer than we expect. We try to outrun them, outgrow them, outperform them. But no amount of success can erase what it felt like to be unseen by the people who were supposed to see us first. What I've learned is this: you don't have to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need permission to choose a different path. You don't owe loyalty to people who only love the version of you that fits their expectations. What you owe to yourself is honesty. The honesty to say no when silence is expected. The honesty to walk away when staying means shrinking. The honesty to build something that reflects who you are, not who others demand you become. I used to think healing would come when my family finally saw me. But healing didn't arrive through their validation. It arrived the moment I stopped waiting for it. And maybe, just maybe, that's where it begins for you too. If you're listening to this and you've been told you're not enough, not practical, not doing it the right way, keep going anyway. If no one cheers for you yet, become your own applause. If no one opens a door, build your own. You are not a failure for choosing differently. You are not lost because your journey isn't straight. You are not wrong for wanting something more than approval. You are the author of a life they never imagined because they didn't have the courage to write it. But you do, so write it, live it, and let that be enough.